Guess what, darling? Through every wave the world throws at us, we stand strong together. Darling, guess what? In a world full of questions, you're my answer. Guess what, darling? No matter the shifts in the world, you'll always be my constant. Darling, guess what? No matter the news, our love is the most important headline of all. Darling, guess what? While the world keeps spinning, my heart still beats only for you. Guess what, darling? Even when the news changes daily, my love for you is timeless. Darling, guess what? In a world of fleeting moments, our connection is everlasting. Guess what, darling? The world may divide us, but love keeps us united. Darling, guess what? Every breaking news reminds me how fragile life is, yet our love feels indestructible. Guess what, darling? Even when the world rushes by, I want to pause every moment with you. Darling, guess what? No headline can capture the beauty of what we share. Guess what, darling? The world may test us, but love always proves us strong. Darling, guess what? Even when the world feels heavy, your presence lightens my heart. Guess what, darling? Amidst all the noise, your love is my quiet revolution. Darling, guess what? While the world tells stories, ours is the one I cherish most. Guess what, darling? No matter how the world changes, my love for you remains unshaken. Darling, guess what? Even in the darkness of headlines, you are my shining light. Guess what, darling? The world outside might be chaotic, but inside us, there's peace. Darling, guess what? While the world seeks answers, I've already found mine in you. Guess what, darling? No matter the storms, our love is a fortress that stands tall. Darling, guess what? Even when the world feels uncertain, your love makes everything clear. Guess what, darling? The news may fade, but the memories we create are eternal. Darling, guess what? No matter how the world changes, your love grounds me. Guess what, darling? In a world of fleeting moments, your love is my forever. Darling, guess what? The world might be loud, but your love is my favorite silence. Guess what, darling? While others chase trends, I'm chasing forever with you. Darling, guess what? In the story of life, you're my favorite chapter. Guess what, darling? Even as the world rushes forward, my heart always lingers with you. Darling, guess what? Every news flash reminds me to cherish you more. Guess what, darling? The world may try to define love, but ours defies explanation. Darling, guess what? Even in a crowded world, Your love is the only thing I see. Guess what, darling? As the world keeps evolving, my love for you only grows deeper. Darling, guess what? While the world races ahead, I'd rather walk slowly by your side. Guess what, darling? No matter what the day brings, your love is my constant night star. Darling, guess what? Even when headlines scream, your whispers calm my soul. Guess what, darling? No matter the changes outside, my love for you is steadfast. Darling, guess what? While the world is full of questions, loving you is my answer. Guess what, darling? Even in uncertainty, your love makes me feel secure. Darling, guess what? No matter how the world shakes, my heart beats steady for you. Guess what, darling? The world's chaos fades when I'm lost in your eyes. Darling, guess what? No matter what happens out there, in here, it's always love. Guess what, darling? While the world focuses on facts, our love is pure emotion. Darling, guess what? In a world full of endings, your love feels like a beautiful beginning. Guess what, darling? The world may keep moving, but my heart will always stay with you. Darling, guess what? The news may distract others, but your love captures all of me. Guess what, darling? In a world full of temporary, your love is my forever. Darling, guess what? The world outside may storm, but you're my sunny refuge. Guess what, darling? Even in a sea of chaos, your love keeps me anchored. Darling, guess what? No matter how uncertain the future, I'm certain of us. Guess what, darling? While the world looks for hope, I've already found mine in you. Darling, guess what? As headlines change, my love for you remains unchangeable. Guess what, darling? The world can wait. My heart has already found its home. Darling, guess what? No matter the breaking news, our love remains the headline. Guess what, darling? Even when the world gets cold, your love keeps me warm. Darling, guess what? While the world debates, I choose you without hesitation. Guess what, darling? The world outside may be busy, but I always make time for you. Darling, guess what? In a world full of chaos, our love is beautifully simple. Guess what, darling? Even as the world shifts, my love for you is constant. Darling, guess what? The world may be changing, but our feelings remain the same. In the midst of all this chaos, darling, guess what? Your heart still speaks louder than any headline. Darling, guess what? Amidst the world's confusion, Love is still the greatest truth. Guess what, darling? The current affairs might be shifting, but your emotions are my constant. Darling, guess what? No matter the world outside, the feelings we share remain untouched. The world may be loud, darling. Guess what? Your heart beats the loudest for me. Guess what, darling? Amidst the turmoil, my feelings for you are a quiet sanctuary. Darling, guess what? No matter how the world turns, my love for you never wavers. Guess what, darling? The news may change by the hour, but our connection is timeless. Darling, guess what? The world can be in pieces, but together we're whole. Guess what, darling? Even in a world full of noise, your heart whispers louder than the headlines. Darling, guess what? No matter the current affairs, love will always find a way. Guess what, darling? In a world of uncertainty, your presence is my greatest certainty. Darling, guess what? No matter what happens out there, I'll always be here for you. Guess what, darling? The world is chaotic, but our bond is calm and enduring. Darling, guess what? Amidst all the noise, your heart is the only sound that matters to me. Guess what, darling? The headlines may change, but our feelings remain unshaken. Darling, guess what? No matter the world around us, I choose you every single time. Guess what, darling? The world's drama may pull us in, but love is our anchor. Darling, guess what? No matter the storm outside, we create our own peace inside. Guess what, darling? Amidst the world's struggles, our love is the one thing that flourishes. Darling, guess what? The world might try to break us, but our feelings will always be our strength. Guess what, darling? While the world is ever changing, our hearts will always be in sync. Darling, guess what? Despite the world's chaos, love continues to evolve, grow, and thrive. Guess what, darling? Amidst all the confusion, we'll always find clarity in each other. Darling, guess what? The world is full of uncertainty, but our love is certain. Guess what, darling? Even when the world seems against us, our hearts stand united. Darling, guess what? The world may be unpredictable, but I'll always be there for you. Guess what, darling? While the world debates, my feelings for you are unwavering. Darling, guess what? In a world of conflict, our love is the resolution. Guess what, darling? Despite the world's distraction, my heart beats for you alone. Darling, guess what? The current affairs may change, but my feelings for you are eternal. Guess what, darling? No matter what the world throws at us, we have each other. Darling, guess what? Love is the only constant in a world that never stands still. Guess what, darling? Even when the world seems to fall apart, we are unbreakable. Darling, guess what? Amidst the headlines, our love is the story that matters most. Guess what, darling? No matter how the world changes, I'll always be your safe haven. Darling, guess what? Even when the world feels uncertain, I find certainty in you. Guess what, darling? Love is the constant amidst all the madness in the world. Darling, guess what? No matter the current events, you are the calm in my storm. Guess what, darling? With each headline that passes, my love for you only deepens. Darling, guess what? As the world shifts, my feelings for you are unshakable. Guess what, darling? Despite all the noise, your love is the melody I choose. Darling, guess what? The world may be unpredictable, but our love is a guarantee. Guess what, darling? No matter how the world spins, you'll always be my center. Darling, guess what? Even in a world full of distractions, you are my only focus. Guess what, darling? In the middle of life's chaos, our love will always find its way. Darling, guess what? No matter the current news, we are the greatest story ever told. Guess what, darling? While the world shifts, we remain constant. Darling, guess what? Through every headline, my heart still beats for you. Guess what, darling? In the rush of life, love is the one thing I never take for granted. Darling, guess what? Amidst the world's madness, you're the calm I long for. Guess what, darling? The world is noisy, but our love is pure and silent. Darling, guess what? No matter the storm, your love is my shelter. Guess what, darling? The world changes, but love remains the one thing that keeps us steady. Darling, guess what? The current affairs may confuse us, but love always clears the way.